I remember the exact moment my world cracked. Not shattered. Not yet. Just a hairline fracture running through everything I thought was solid. It was James's phone. He'd left it on the kitchen counter while he showered, something he never did. 7 years of marriage and his phone was always in his pocket, always facing down, always locked. But that morning it wasn't. Maybe he'd grown careless, or maybe he'd grown so confident in my trust that he thought I wouldn't look. Either way, when it lit up with a text message, I couldn't help but see the name, Emma, with a heart emoji beside it. I stood there, coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips, staring at those 5 letters like they were written in a language I couldn't quite understand. Emma. Who was Emma? The message preview only showed, "Can't wait to see you two," before cutting off. My finger hovered over the screen. I'd never checked his phone before. We had boundaries, trust. At least I thought we did. I set my mug down, the ceramic making too loud a sound against the marble countertop. The shower was still running upstairs. I had time. With a quick swipe, I opened the message. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that blue shirt I love. Miss your hands already." The words blurred. I scrolled up, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Hundreds of messages, pictures, plans. A parallel life my husband had been living right alongside ours. I read snippets, each one worse than the last. "Best 3 months of my life. When will you tell her? I've never felt this way about anyone. 3 months. 3 months while we ate dinner together, while we made weekend plans, while he kissed me goodnight and told me he loved me. 3 months of lies stacked so neatly I hadn't seen them piling up." The shower stopped. I placed the phone exactly as I'd found it and moved to the sink, turning on the water to splash my face. When James came downstairs, hair still damp, I was buttering toast, my back to him, my face a mask of normalcy I didn't know I could wear. "Morning, babe," he said, kissing the top of my head as he passed. His lips felt like a brand. "What's on for today?" I turned, handing him a plate. "Not much. Lunch with Lisa at that new place downtown." My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "You?" He shrugged, eyes on his toast. "Just the usual. Probably work late." Another lie, served up so casually it almost seemed true. "Meeting with clients?" I asked, watching his face. "Yeah, the Richardson account. Boring stuff." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. James had always been a terrible liar, I realized. I just hadn't been looking for the signs. "Sounds tedious," I said, and smiled back, my cheeks aching with the effort. When he left for work, briefcase in hand, crisp suit hiding the monster beneath, I closed the door behind him and slid down against it until I hit the floor. Our wedding photo hung on the opposite wall, both of us beaming, surrounded by white flowers and promises. I stared at it for a long time, at the woman I used to be. She looked so certain, so safe in her happiness. I thought about calling him out, screaming, throwing things, burning his clothes in the backyard like women did in movies. But something deeper, colder took hold instead. I wanted to understand the extent of it first, how far the cracks went, how hollow our life really was. I spent that day in a strange, detached state, moving through our house like a ghost. In our bedroom closet, I found receipts for restaurants we'd never been to. In his desk drawer, a small velvet box containing silver earrings I'd never seen, certainly never worn. And in his work laptop, which he'd conveniently forgotten at home, emails arranging weekend conferences that had never existed. The evidence piled up hour by hour, and with it, my grief transformed into something else. Not just betrayal, but the distinct sensation of being made a fool of having played a part in someone else's charade without knowing the script. By evening, when I heard his key in the lock, I was no longer the woman he'd left that morning. I was someone new, someone with ice in her veins and fire in her chest, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. Revenge fantasies are funny things. In the movies, they're dramatic confrontations with shouting and tears, grand gestures of defiance, but real revenge, I was discovering, was quieter, more calculated. It started with dinner. I cooked his favorite that night, steak with roasted potatoes, a a bottle of the red wine we'd brought back from our anniversary trip to Napa last year. I wore the dress he liked, put on makeup, lit candles. James looked surprised when he walked in, loosening his tie as he surveyed the scene. "What's all this for?" he asked, a wariness in his voice that might have hurt me yesterday. "No reason," I said, smiling. "Just felt like making something nice." We ate, and I asked about his day. He lied, smoothly this time, about meetings and conference calls. I nodded, made appropriate sounds of interest, topped up his wine glass. And then I asked, very casually, "Have you ever been to that new Italian place, Bellini's?" His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Just for a second, but enough. "No, I don't think so." "Why?" "Lisa mentioned it at lunch, said it was good." I took a sip of wine, watching him over the rim of my glass. "Funny though, I could have sworn I saw a receipt from there in your jacket pocket when I was doing laundry." The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost comical. "Oh, right. Yes, I did go there. For a client lunch a while back. Forgot about it." "Must not have been very memorable," I said lightly. His eyes couldn't quite meet mine now. "Yeah, it was just a quick thing." I let the silence stretch between us, watching him squirm. "James," I finally said. "Who's Emma?" The name fell between us like a grenade. He set down his fork, his face cycling through surprise, denial, and then, finally, resignation. "Kate, I can explain," he started. The word so cliché I almost laughed. "I'm sure you can," I replied. "You've been explaining things to me for 3 months now, haven't you? Explaining why you're working late, explaining weekend conferences, explaining text messages and credit card bills. It's not what you think, isn't it?" I cut him off. "Because I think you've been sleeping with someone named Emma. I think you've been lying to my face every day. I think you bought her silver earrings and took her to Bellini's and told her you were going to leave me." He stared at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish. "How did you... Does it matter?" I pushed my plate away, suddenly nauseated by the food, by him, by all of it. What matters is what happens now. What happened next wasn't what either of us expected. There was no screaming, no throwing of plates. Instead, I listened as he fumbled through explanations that sounded rehearsed, as if he'd been preparing for this moment. She was just a coworker. It had started innocently. He'd been feeling distant from me. He was confused. He loved me. Of course he loved me. Words, words, words. Empty as the promises he'd made on our wedding day. When he finished, I said nothing for a long time. Then, "I want you to leave. Kate, please. Not forever, just tonight. I need to think, and I can't do that with you here." He looked like he might argue, but something in my face must have stopped him. He nodded, stood up, and went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closing. 20 minutes later, he came down with an overnight bag. "I'll go to Mike's," he said, hovering by the door. "Can I call you tomorrow?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry. Instead, I methodically cleared the table, blew out the candles, and opened my laptop. First, I transferred half of our savings to an account in my name only. Then I called Lisa, who answered on the first ring as if she'd been waiting. "He's gone?" she asked. "For tonight," I confirmed. "Tomorrow we start phase 2. "Are you sure about this?" Her voice was gentle, concerned. "It's not too late to just walk away, you know." I thought about the texts, the lies, the ease with which he'd deceived me. "I'm sure," I said. "He doesn't get to just walk away from this. Neither of them do." After I hung up, I went upstairs and stood in our bedroom, the room where we'd slept side by side while he dreamed of another woman. I opened his closet and ran my fingers over his suits, his shirts, the blue one she liked so much. For a moment, grief threatened to overwhelm me, not just for the marriage, but for the woman I'd been yesterday, trusting, oblivious, gone now. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. I had work to do. Betrayal changes you. It changes how you see the world, how you remember the past, how you plan for the future. The morning after I sent James away, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Lisa arrived at 9 with coffee and determination. My oldest friend since college, she'd seen me through breakups before, but never something like this. She set her laptop on the kitchen island next to mine and pulled up a chair. "Show me everything," she said. Together, we pieced together the timeline of James's affair. Emma Peterson worked in his department. Younger, of course, with the kind of glossy confidence that came from never having been truly hurt. Their first coffee meeting had been in February, right after I'd spent 2 weeks caring for my mother after her surgery. The affair escalated quickly after that. Dinners, hotel rooms, weekend trips disguised as work obligations. "He took her to Charleston," I said numbly, looking at the hotel receipt, "for our anniversary weekend. He told me he couldn't get away from work." Lisa's face hardened. "What do you want to do?" I'd been thinking about this all night. "I want to understand why," I said slowly. "Not his excuses, the real reason. And then I want him to understand what he's lost." That afternoon I went to his office. Not to make a scene, I had more dignity than that, but to retrieve the family photo albums he'd stored there during our last move. The receptionist knew me, smiled warmly as she buzzed me in. "James is in a meeting," she said, "but you know where his office is." I nodded, thanking her, and walked down the familiar hallway. But instead of turning toward James's corner office, I headed to the break room. It was empty except for a woman sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone. I recognized her immediately from the photos I'd found. Emma. She looked up as I entered, her expression neutral. She had no idea who I was. "Hi," I said, smiling as I fixed myself a cup of coffee. "I'm Kate." "Emma," she replied, with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. I sat down across from her. "You work with my husband, right? James Mitchell?" The change was immediate. Her face flushed, her eyes widened, her fingers tightened around her phone. Yes, I do. Thought so," I said, keeping my voice light. "He's mentioned you. Creative team, right?" She nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "Good. He works such long hours these days," I continued. "Always coming home late, traveling for those weekend conferences. It must be a demanding project." Emma stared at me, clearly trying to determine if this was a coincidence or if I knew. I took a sip of coffee, letting her squirm. "Actually," she finally said, gathering her courage, "James and I have been working closely together." "Yes. How closely?" I asked, my smile never faltering. She stood up abruptly. "I should get back to work." "Before you go," I said, "I should probably mention that James won't be in today. He spent the night at his friend Mike's after I found your texts on his phone." The color drained from her face. "Kate, Don't," I cut her off. "I'm not here for explanations or apologies. I just wanted to see you, to understand what was worth destroying a 7-year marriage for." I looked at her, this stranger who had inserted herself into my life without my knowledge. Was it worth it? She didn't answer, just gathered her things and hurried out, nearly colliding with a man entering the break room. I finished my coffee slowly, then went to James's office. The photo albums weren't there, another lie, but I left something on his desk instead, his house key, removed from his keyring. When I got home, James was waiting on the porch looking haggard. He stood as I approached. "Kate, please, can we talk?" I unlocked the door and let him in, not out of forgiveness, but because I didn't want the neighbors witnessing what came next. In our living room, he paced while I sat calmly on the couch. "Emma called me," he said. "What were you thinking going to my office like that?" I laughed, the sound surprising both of us. "What was I thinking? That's really your first question?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I'm sorry. You're right. I didn't expect you to confront her. And I didn't expect you to sleep with her, so I guess we're both having surprising weeks." He sat down heavily in the armchair across from me. "I ended it. This morning. It's over." "Congratulations," I said flatly. "Would you like a medal?" "Kate, please. I made a terrible mistake. I know that. But we can work through this. Go to counseling. Start over." I studied his face. The face I'd woken up to for 7 years. The face I'd trusted completely. Now, I saw something different. Weakness. Selfishness. Fear. "There's no starting over," I said quietly. "You didn't just cheat on me, James. You created an entire alternate life. You lied to my face every day for months. You missed my birthday dinner because you were with her. You took her to places that were special to us." "I know," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught." He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I've talked to a lawyer," I told him. "The house is in my name. My inheritance paid for it, as you might recall. You have 2 days to pack your things and find somewhere else to live." "You're not even willing to try?" His voice cracked. 7 years, Kate. Doesn't that mean anything? I stood up, suddenly tired of this conversation. Of him. "It meant everything to me," I said. "Apparently to you it was worth throwing away for 3 months with Emma." As I walked toward the stairs, he called after me. "Where are you going?" I paused, one hand on the banister. "To pack your things. Your 2 days start now. People talk about the drama of divorce, the screaming matches, the thrown plates, the dramatic exits. Nobody talks about the silence, the awful, echoing silence that follows when half of your life walks out the door." James left on a Tuesday morning. The weather was mockingly perfect, sunshine streaming through windows I'd opened to clear out the suffocating atmosphere of our final days together. He didn't fight me on the time frame. Perhaps he realized he'd lost the right to negotiate. Or perhaps Emma had already offered her spare room. I didn't ask, and he didn't volunteer the information. I sat at the kitchen table, watching as he made trip after trip to his car, loading boxes and suitcases, the essentials of his life reduced to what could fit in a sedan. When he was done, he stood awkwardly in the doorway, keys in hand. "I guess that's everything," he said, his voice unnaturally loud in the quiet house. "Is it?" I asked, not looking at him. He shifted his weight. "Kate, I know you don't believe me, but I am sorry. Truly sorry." "I believe you're sorry," I said, finally meeting his eyes. "I just don't think you're sorry for the right reasons." He looked away first. "Can I call you? To check in?" "No," I said simply. "Our lawyers can handle any communication." After a pause that stretched too long, he nodded and turned to leave. At the last moment, he looked back. "I did love you, you know. I still do." The words hung in the air between us, meaningless sounds that once would have warmed me. Now they just made me tired. "Goodbye, James," I said, and turned away so I wouldn't have to watch him go. When the door clicked shut, the silence descended like a physical weight. I walked through the house, touching door frames, running my fingers along countertops, relearning the space that was now entirely mine. In my bedroom, the closet gaped half empty. In the bathroom, a single toothbrush stood in the holder. Everywhere, evidence of subtraction. That night, I slept on the couch. I couldn't face the bed yet, couldn't bear the empty space beside me. I woke at 3 a.m., disoriented and cold, and for one confused moment reached out for a body that wasn't there. Reality crashed back, and I curled into myself, finally allowing the tears I'd been holding back. I cried until my throat hurt, until my eyes swelled, until the cushion beneath my face was soaked. I cried for the life I'd thought I had, for the future I'd planned, for the trust I'd given so freely. And when I was done, when the tears had run dry, and the first gray light of dawn was creeping through the windows, I felt hollow, but somehow lighter. Lisa called at 9, her voice cautious. "How are you doing?" "He's gone," I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. "Do you want me to come over?" I thought about it. "No," I decided. "I need to be alone for a bit. Call me if you change your mind." Day or night. After we hung up, I showered, scrubbing away the salt tracks of tears, the lingering scent of James's cologne that seemed embedded in the walls. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I started cleaning. Not just tidying, but deep, aggressive cleaning. I stripped the bed and stuffed the sheets into the washing machine. I scrubbed the shower until my arms ached. I emptied the refrigerator of all the foods only James ate. By afternoon, I was sweaty and exhausted, but the house smelled of lemon cleaner instead of betrayal. In the process, I'd found small reminders of him tucked in corners, a forgotten pair of cufflinks, a novel he'd been reading, a birthday card I'd given him years ago. I put them all in a box labeled James and shoved it into the back of the hall closet, out of sight, if not quite out of mind. As evening fell, I ordered takeout from a Thai place James had always complained about. I ate directly from the container, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, using chopsticks when James had always insisted on forks. Small rebellions, but they felt significant. My phone buzzed with a text. James, just wanted to make sure you're okay. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. He'd lost the right to know if I was okay. That night, I slept in the bed. Our bed. My bed now. I spread out diagonally across the mattress, taking up space in a way I never had before. The emptiness beside me still ached, but it was beginning to feel less like an absence and more like possibility. In the darkness, I whispered to myself, "This is day one." My mother called it the widow year, not because James had died, but because something had. The woman I'd been as his wife. "You need to mourn her properly," Mom said, her voice crackling over the phone from 3 states away. "And then you need to figure out who you are now." It had been 6 weeks since he'd left. 6 weeks of learning to sleep alone, to cook for one, to stop saying we when I meant I. The divorce proceedings had begun, a sterile exchange of paperwork and assets. James had been surprisingly accommodating, agreeing to my terms without argument. Maybe guilt was good for something after all. "I don't know who I am without him," I admitted to Mom. "Isn't that pathetic?" "I'm 34 years old. It's not pathetic," she said firmly. "It's normal. You've been Catherine Mitchell for 7 years. Before that, you were building toward becoming Catherine Mitchell. Now you get to be Kate Sullivan again." Kate Sullivan. My maiden name felt foreign on my tongue when I tried it out later, looking at myself in the bathroom mirror. My reflection stared back, searching for the woman who had once answered to that name. She was there, somewhere beneath the grief and exhaustion. The question was how to find her. I started small. I changed my name on social media, ignoring the flood of concerned messages that followed. I ordered new business cards for my freelance graphic design work. I signed up for a pottery class I'd always wanted to try, but had put off because James thought it was a waste of money. The first night of the class, I sat at the wheel feeling utterly lost as clay slipped through my fingers, refusing to take shape. The instructor, an older woman with clay-caked hands and kind eyes, sat beside me. "You're thinking too hard," she said. "Let your hands remember what your mind has forgotten." "My hands don't know anything about pottery," I said, frustrated. She smiled. "I'm not talking about pottery. By the end of the evening, I'd created nothing but misshapen lumps, but I'd laughed for the first time in weeks. It was a rusty sound, but genuine. When I got home, I marked the day on my calendar with a small star. More stars followed. The day I finally cleaned out James's nightstand and found a book I'd thought was lost. The afternoon I rearranged the living room furniture, pushing the couch against a different wall because I could. The morning I ran into James's mother at the grocery store and managed a civil conversation without falling apart afterward. Lisa insisted on taking me out for my birthday, dragging me to a new restaurant downtown despite my protests that I wasn't in a celebrating mood. 35 is a big deal, she declared, pouring champagne. It's the year you get to reinvent yourself. Is that scientifically proven? I asked dryly. Absolutely. I read it in a very serious scientific journal called My Friend Needs to Stop Moping and Start Living Again Monthly. I laughed, surprising myself. Fine. To reinvention then. We clinked glasses. After dinner, pleasantly buzzed from champagne, we walked past shop windows glowing in the evening light. I stopped abruptly in front of a hair salon still open late. "What?" Lisa asked, following my gaze. Without answering, I walked in. 30 minutes later, I emerged with my long brown hair, the hair James had loved, cut into a short, sharp bob that framed my face in a way that felt both foreign and exactly right. Lisa stared. "Wow." I ran a hand through it, feeling the strange weightlessness. "Too much?" "No," she said slowly. "It's perfect. It's very Kate." That night, I dreamed of James. Not the James who had betrayed me, but the James I'd fallen in love with years ago. In the dream, we were walking on a beach, and he kept trying to tell me something important, but the wind carried his words away. I woke with tears on my face but couldn't remember why. The next day, I received divorce papers in the mail. Final ones, needing only my signature to end the marriage officially. I set them on the kitchen table and stared at them for a long time, pen in hand. This was it. The last act of Catherine Mitchell. I signed my maiden name with a flourish. Kate Sullivan. It felt right. When I returned the papers to my lawyer, she asked if I was okay. "I'm getting there," I said, and meant it. That weekend, I cleared out the guest room that had become a storage space for abandoned hobbies and half-finished projects. I painted the walls a deep teal, a color James would have hated, and set up my drafting table by the window. My freelance work had been sporadic since the separation, but now I found myself hungry for it again, for the satisfaction of creating something from nothing. As I worked late into the night on a new project, losing myself in lines and colors, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to live again, not as James's wife or James's ex-wife, but as myself, Kate Sullivan, artist, friend, daughter, work in progress. The woman in the mirror was starting to look familiar again. Fall arrived with a vengeance, painting the trees in flames of red and gold, and sending rain to rattle against my windows at night. I'd developed a ritual for these evenings. Tea, a book I actually wanted to read rather than one James had recommended, and music he would have complained about playing softly in the background. Small freedoms adding up to something like contentment. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks earlier. I'd gone alone to the courthouse, signed the last papers, and walked out feeling oddly anticlimactic. No dramatic music swelled, no weight visibly lifted from my shoulders. Just a Tuesday afternoon, cloudy with a chance of new beginnings. I was thinking about this as I browsed the shelves at my favorite bookstore downtown, a place I'd rediscovered in my post-James life. The shop was nearly empty. Just me and the elderly owner who knew me by name now, and a tall man in a gray jacket examining art books across the room. "Anything particular you're looking for today, Kate?" the owner called from behind the counter. "Just browsing," I replied, then froze as the man in the gray jacket turned at the sound of my voice. It was James. We stared at each other across the rows of books. He looked different somehow. Thinner, his hair shorter, something uncertain in his posture that hadn't been there before. I wondered if I looked different to him too. "Kate," he said, taking a step toward me. "Hi, James." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I didn't know you still came here." He glanced around, as if seeing the store for the first time. "I don't, usually. I was just passing by and remembered they have a good art section." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unasked questions. Finally, he spoke again. "You cut your hair." I touched it self-consciously. "Yes, it looks nice," he said, then quickly added, "Not that you need my approval or anything. It suits you. Thanks." I shifted the books in my arms, suddenly eager to be anywhere else. Well, I should get going. "Kate, wait." He took another step closer, then stopped, respecting the invisible boundary between us. "How are you?" "Really?" The question caught me off guard. In the months since our separation, our communication had been limited to terse emails about practical matters and exchanges through lawyers. This genuine inquiry felt like a step into unfamiliar territory. I started to say fine, the automatic response, but found myself answering honestly instead. "I'm doing better. Some days are harder than others, but mostly better." He nodded, something like relief crossing his face. "Good. That's really good." I surprised myself by asking, "And you?" He hesitated. "I'm learning a lot about myself. Not all of it flattering." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. The silence stretched again, less awkward this time. "I moved," he said eventually. "Got an apartment on the west side." "With Emma?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He looked down. "No, that ended. It wasn't real. What we had was..." He stopped himself. "Sorry, you don't need to hear this." "No, I don't," I agreed, but found I wasn't as angry as I would have been months ago. The pain was still there, but duller now, like an old injury that aches when it rains. He cleared his throat. "Well, I won't keep you. It was good to see you, Kate." As he turned to leave, I found myself saying, "James?" He looked back, hope flickering briefly across his face. "I don't forgive you," I said quietly. "I'm not sure I ever will." but I'm not angry every minute of every day anymore. That's something, I think. He nodded slowly. It's more than I deserve. After he left, I stood in the same spot for a long time, examining how I felt. There was sadness there, yes, and a lingering sense of loss. But the rage that had fueled me through those first terrible months had burned down to embers. In its place was something quieter, steadier. Not forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. I bought my books and walked home through the autumn evening, leaves crunching beneath my feet, thinking about unexpected encounters and the strange, winding path of healing. That night, I called Lisa. I saw James today. What? Her voice pitched high with concern. Where? Are you okay? At Riverby Books. And yes, I think I am. What happened? Did he try to convince you to take him back? Do I need to come over and help you burn his remaining possessions? I laughed. No, nothing like that. It was actually civil. Almost normal. Normal or weird normal? Somewhere in between, I said, trying to find the right words. Like talking to someone you used to know very well but don't anymore. She said, skeptical. Well, as long as you're okay. I am, I assured her, surprised to find it was true. It was good, actually, like closing a chapter properly instead of just slamming the book shut. After we hung up, I sat on my porch swing, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood. In the house across the street, a family moved behind lit windows, their silhouettes creating a moving tableau of ordinary life. Once, I'd envied them their wholeness, their apparent stability. Now I understood that all families, all relationships, had their own complicated stories hidden behind drawn curtains. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I hadn't deleted but hadn't used in months. James, it really was good to see you today. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Finally, I typed, "Take care of yourself, James." Then I set the phone down and returned to watching the night deepen around me, wrapping myself in the quiet certainty that whatever came next, I would face it as myself.